Hello, this is Ed Rigsbee with another edition of Raw and Unedited, the place where we help you with tips, tactics, and all kinds of cool innovations on how to make you, or help you to be, a better executive in running your trade association or professional society. Well, right now, with us moving to a lot of virtual meetings, one of the big questions is, how do we make these meetings warm and fuzzy for our attendees? How do we help our attendees to still feel like it's a family gathering? And to answer that question, I've got Laura.Farr. She is the Executive Director of the American Association of Naturopathic Physicians. So let's jump into it. And Laura, your meeting, you gave me some information, and you just had your virtual meeting, and the key markers that you shared with me were that you had 93% fewer expenses.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
It's amazing what happens when you get it out of the hotels.
That's amazing. Yeah, when you don't have to buy bacon, you can make money. 79% less exhibitor income. Well, that's interesting. We'll talk about that. 55% higher registrations. So many executives are saying, oh, we can't get people to register for our conference. You had 55% more. That was pretty impressive. And 7% higher registration income. Now, conveniently, you didn't tell me what your total net profit income was, but I won't ask that question. The thing that I was very impressed with, and just for everybody that's watching this, I'm going to talk to Laura first about some of the things that she would do differently next time, some really key learners, because I think everybody getting ready to do this would want to know that. And then after we get into what she would do differently, then we'll talk about some of the things that she did do to really, really boost engagement. So Laura, let's talk about what would you do differently?
Yeah, I think one of the more challenging parts of the virtual convention, as we see in an in-person convention too, is the exhibit hall. And it is a different, very, very different exhibiting experience for the exhibitors that we also were learning ourselves how to manage and facilitate for them. So a couple of things that we'd really do differently for the exhibitors is we scheduled anywhere between 15-minute to 20-minute exhibit breaks. And those were both times that our participants were expected to get up, stretch their legs, go visit the exhibit hall, but then also to create part of the warm and fuzzies, we also had some breakout sessions, movement sessions, qigong sessions, yoga sessions to just keep participants engaged. Those exhibit breaks were not sufficient. They really needed to be longer. Both exhibitors and participants told us that they felt like they didn't really have enough time to really go try to check out the exhibit hall. Bear in mind, our exhibit hall did have the capacity where people could enter a booth and try to have a live, real Zoom conversation with a booth attendant. So we had told the exhibitors, please be available during these times so that people can try to initiate a conversation with you. And it just didn't work. So longer breaks, or structure it so that at the end of the day, you allocate, here's a good block of time, or maybe in the middle of the day, that really this is your time to go see the exhibit hall, like we would do in an in-person event. I think both participants and exhibitors would appreciate that. The other thing that was really clear with the exhibit hall, and I hadn't shared this with you in advance, Ed, was we have to handhold the exhibitors in how to use this platform because it is very, very foreign to them. So just some examples. We did a tutorial video for them of, here's how you set up your exhibit booth. Here's where you manage the statistics. Here's where you can see who's visiting your exhibit booth. But nobody watched the tutorial video, right? They never do. They never read their emails, or it's the sales rep who gets the email and the booth rep doesn't get it. So we definitely saw that they were not familiar with the platform, which led to a lot of confusion. I would recommend that anybody do one-on-one conversations, walking through every single exhibitor and their booth rep with how to use the platform that you're using. I know it's super intensive from the front end, but I think it's absolutely critical for the exhibitors having a good experience. And here's what we saw. Our platform, we used Pathable. Our platform registered anytime somebody clicked on an exhibitor's logo and went to go visit their booth, it registered their name. And then if they clicked on request for information, that's considered a live lead, and you can instant message, the exhibitors can instant message with that person. So they got 2 data points. One is everybody who came into their booth, and then who's a live lead. And we would get exhibitors telling us, nobody's come into our booth, because they weren't initiating a live Zoom call. But then when we went in the back end and went through the metrics with them, we were able to say, no, look, 100 people have clicked into your booth space and you have all of their names. You need to go to the participant list and reach out to them and say, hey, I saw you stop by my booth. Do you have any questions? Did you know that we're running this promotional deal during this conference? Let me know if I can have a conversation with you. They need to be proactive in a different way, but it's all built into the platform right there for them. They just need to be led to it. And of course, those live leads, they should be setting up real appointments with those people.
Sure.
So once we told them that, they were like, oh my God, I had no idea. I had 100 people who clicked in and saw my material. Wow, that's actually really great. So a lot of front end stuff needs to be done with the exhibitors, and a lot of, it's just teaching them how to exhibit in a totally different way. We have to teach them how to be exhibitors.
Now, you also mentioned to me about magic keys.
Yes. So this was something specific to our platform, but I'm fairly certain that most platforms will have them. The way Pathable worked is that 20 minutes before any agenda item, whether it was an exhibit hall booth or a lecture, it populates the Zoom information into the back end. And there is a mechanism to get the full link to enter the Zoom room for that particular agenda item. And you just need to be prepared to know how to pick up that magic key and send it really quickly for when a speaker has a hard time getting access, or when a participant has a hard time getting access, or your exhibitors too. We didn't have to use it very often. We really tried to push people to make sure you log into the platform and follow these steps to get to where you're trying to get to. But you will invariably have those panic moments of the speaker shows up late, they're really untech savvy. Just grab that magic key and text it to them, and then they can get in.
Did you do a session where you ran your speakers through a training?
Multiple. Yeah, we did sessions for the speakers on the platform that the platform actually guided, and then we did staff-led trainings with some speakers. With some speakers, we had to do one-on-one trainings, the ones who really are not tech savvy. And then we did an additional training on just how speakers can be successful in, having a green screen, having good lighting for their space, not having kids running in the background, stuff like that had nothing to do with the platform.
Hashtag working from home, yeah.
Yeah.
So a couple things about the speakers. You made mention that there was a little bit of a challenge with some coming late, which to me
that's terrifying.
That to me that's unconscionable, but that's just my opinion. Okay, that's just me.
So we had some speakers get the time zone difference wrong, right? Some of it's just human error.
Yeah, sure. Now, also you mentioned that some of them ran over, which caused a challenge with that 15-minute break. Any thoughts or suggestions? People coming up, they're going to be doing their conference. Okay, how do you pull out the hook and pull the speaker off stage virtually? When their session is done, to guarantee that, okay, you're supposed to end at 2, not 2:10 or whatever.
Right. So we had, a lot of these platforms are set up so that the speaker can just join the Zoom and they're in charge of the whole thing. our platform was set up that way too. And we strongly recommend that you don't allow speakers to just do that.
I see.
So we had 2 staff people in every single session. We had a board member who acted as the MC, who introduced the speaker and would ask questions from participants and monitor the chat. And then we had a staff person who was the technical assistance person. And so between the board member and the staff person, we told the speakers in advance, 5 minutes before the end of the session, if you're not already wrapping up, we will interrupt you and tell you that your time is coming to a close. Still, speakers ran over and we did have to interrupt them. You know, sometimes it was okay, we let them go a little bit, but we did have to just cut them off and interrupt what they were saying.
Now, you had mentioned that you were really, really successful in getting most of the speakers to waive their honorariums.
Yeah.
Just interesting. I mean, that's a pretty amazing feat to be able to pull that off. Were these professional speakers? Were these industry speakers? What type of folks were these people?
They are professional members and non-members. So they're all doctors. We represent naturopathic physicians. So they're all doctors. We had I think we started out with about 43 speakers. We ended up with 37 or so, all but 6 agreed to waive their honorarium. And the 6 who didn't, 2 of them, it was for financial reasons, but the others were because they chose not to speak, not because they didn't want to waive the honorarium, but because they felt their content wouldn't be adequately represented in a virtual forum.
Interesting.
So really, we got all but about 2 of our speakers to agree to waive the honorarium. And we did, you know, like everybody, we were running scenarios, financial scenarios, where we were expecting losses of anywhere between 50 to 85% of our normal convention net profit. So we shared that with speakers. This is an uncertain financial time for the association as much as it is for all of our members. And they really heard that.
Yeah. So that's great. No, that's very helpful. So let's get into the fun stuff. Let's get into, I mean, now that we got through the drudgery of, because the notes that you had sent me that I was reading through on how to create warm and fuzzies, and it sounded really, really good. And maybe what we should do is just let you start with kind of the structure of how you laid out your meeting this year as opposed to previous years, and then go into some of the engagement things that you did.
Sure. So as the kind of backdrop to that, we were really well into planning our normal in-person conference before we made the decision to go virtual. So we did not have the luxury of planning this as a virtual event from the beginning. So we were trying to make it as similar as possible to what people would experience in an in-person event. Normally, it's a 3-day conference with a pre-conference and a post-conference, so it's almost 5 days of meeting time. We have large exhibit hall breaks. We've got usually about 110 exhibitors or so and around 600 providers. And the providers include our speakers, as well as a lot of our exhibitors have doctors who also take the continuing education, who are their booth reps. So, and a whole bunch of students. We condensed that into a 2.5-day virtual conference. We did decide to keep it all contained in the same dates as originally planned. And then we had a half-day post-conference on the last Sunday. We were supposed to be in Denver, so we kept everything in Mountain Time, and that was helpful for both ends of the coastal spectrum. And our days we condensed. Normally we run from about 8 a.m. till 6 p.m. lectures. We condensed that to 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. inclusive of social activities. Mm-hmm. So it was really packed. So that's the structure of it. Where do you want to go from here?
Okay, well, sure. You had talked about doing a pre-conference package. You had talked about, for the first 400 people, you had talked about, starting, the days with yoga,
right.
About how your gala went, You also mentioned that you started one day with African dance. So I guess and then you had mentioned about how you did your happy hour.
Right.
And you know, one of the things that I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but one of the things that really hit me in the notes that you sent me, that you said that members told you that during your happy hour, when you know, it would put people in a breakout room, then shake them up and then put them in a different, that I don't know how to nicely call people wallflowers, but whoever
Introvert.
thank you, appreciate that. The introverts, that they found it so valuable because they got to talk to some of the big names,
Right.
that they would have never, ever in a million years walked up to and approached to talk to in a bar or after an event.
Right.
So those are some of the things that I think people would love to hear more about.
That's how we created the Warm Fuzzies. And you and I started having this conversation because somebody had posted on ASAE that they have a very tight-knit membership community. They really feel like it's meeting together with family when they go to the convention. And we have that same dynamic. We're a very small profession. People are really close in friendships and professional relationships. So that was a really important part for us. And we did it in stages. So I'll get to the happy hour in just a minute. But the first thing that we did at the very beginning, before our first keynote, we did a tutorial on how to use the platform and how to get familiar with the Zoom functions. Then after the keynote, we did a fun session, which we called country pop-ups, because we really wanted to help people see who was there with each other in the conference. This was 15 minutes. It was super fast. But in the country pop-ups, it served two purposes. One was to help people see who's here from different parts of the country. But it was also to help them learn how to use their Zoom controls again. So this was a gallery format. You could see everybody's pictures, and we walked them through. Here's how you scroll to the next page. Make sure you have your video camera on. Here's how you turn your mute on, your video camera on and off. And then we got most people with their video cameras on. And then we just did silly questions, you know, like, who's here from the Northeast? And we unmuted everybody and encouraged everybody to say, yay! Mm-hmm. And who's here as an alumni of this college? Yay! So it was super fast. And then we had a breakout session. And then we did the happy hour. And the happy hour was, again, a gallery session where everybody could see each other's pictures. We did some pithy remarks at the beginning to open and welcome everybody. And then we broke them out into Zoom breakout rooms and told everybody that this was what was going to happen. We structured it as speed dating. So we broke everybody out into however many rooms so that each room had about 10 to 12 people in it. We set it up for 15 minutes. I would say that's a little bit long. I would target maybe 10 to 12 minutes or so.
Why is that?
Toward the end of the 15 minutes, everybody, all the 10 or so people had said something, and some of the rooms got a little bit awkward.
Oh, okay.
Because they didn't really know how to carry the conversation. Okay. Some of the rooms did great, but to mitigate those awkward rooms, I'd shorten the time a little bit. So everybody got a chance to speak. We had some icebreaker questions ready. So if people didn't inherently know each other, there could be conversation. But most people in most rooms saw somebody that they knew and like, hey, John, it's so good to see you. You know, it was that dynamic of running into each other in the hallway at an in-person convention. What was neat about it is that you were stuck in this little room, Zoom room, with 10 to 12 people. So the folks who knew each other really well kind of led the conversation, but everybody was encouraged to speak. So we had students who attended who would never ever walk up to an elder physician who's been practicing for 40 years and just introduce themselves, right? So it created an opportunity for students, for younger doctors to say, oh my gosh, Dr. Cronin, it's so nice to meet you. This is really a great opportunity. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. Same with those wallflowers. Those introverted people had an opportunity to just speak and say something that they would never normally do. Mm-hmm. After the 10, 15 minutes, we brought everybody back to the same room. Everybody like oohed and awed. That was so neat. You know, it's a weird experience being pulled out of these Zoom rooms. Sure. And then we scrambled them and sent everybody back out to a different room. So
let me ask you a question.
That 3 times.
you had a situation where the senior people in your industry, or the newer people, got to meet them. Was there a need to prep these people, these senior people, beforehand that this might happen, or was it just kind of a natural occurrence?
It was a natural occurrence.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you could take advantage of the opportunity to maybe pre-program some mentorship opportunities. Absolutely. But ours was definitely more organic.
Just, wow.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And by the end of it, people came in late, people dropped off. We maintained a pretty steady number for the whole time. But after 3 rounds, you could tell that people were starting to get a little bit tired of it. We kind of made a joke that this is the crew that's hanging out at the bar in front of the fireplace late at night. At some point you just got to shut it down.
Yeah. Wait, which hotel were you supposed to be in Denver?
The Westin Westminster.
Oh, okay.
Let me add one more thing.
Sure,
that comment, we had a comment from somebody who's a real introvert. He texted me afterward. He joked, I'm probably in the ranking for the top 5 most introverted people on the planet. And I have never had such a wonderful experience at an AANP convention as I did in those speed dating Zoom rooms during the happy hour.
Boy.
So that was really fun.
Yeah.
It was really well received.
You got to get that person on video for the testimony for next year.
Right.
Because who knows how long this pandemic's going to last. Something that really caught my attention, you were talking about dance breaks, and you said your group likes to dance.
Yeah.
Talk to me more about that.
They love to dance. So we represent practitioners who are very much in the integrative medicine field. They do a lot with physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health. And one aspect of that is movement is extremely important. So we had early morning sessions where we kicked off one day with an African dance that was pre-recorded actually, but oh my gosh, people loved it. It was so high energy. And then during breaks, we had a yoga breakout session so just 15, 20 minutes, get your body moving. We had a Qigong breakout session. We actually had a sound bowl session, which is a very meditative, calming opportunity. So we had those kinds of let's shake things up movements that were very, very pre-planned, meditated, carefully thought out of where they should be placed in the program so that people were not just sitting in front of a screen listening to droning lectures for 2.5 straight days.
Did you get many comments, much feedback on that from your attendees?
It's a good question. We didn't get a ton of feedback from them. Each session had, I'd say, anywhere between 20 to the African dance session had about 60 or 70 people participating. So they definitely didn't grab a large percentage of the audience, but the comments in the chats were all really positive. We didn't get a whole lot of comments in the evaluation forms afterward about whether those are really necessary or required or valued. So it is something to assess.
On the topic of dance, you said that you had a truncated gala
We did.
award ceremony, and you hired a virtual DJ or remote DJ, and you said that your people were dancing during that. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, we did. So we normally have a gala. At our gala, we do a whole award ceremony. It's kind of boring. We have to reassess it. But and then we have a dance immediately after the award ceremony and a fundraiser in the middle. So we did a truncated version of all of it. The awards, instead of giving awards to individual people and inviting them to come and do their long, boring speeches, we opted to give the awards to groups. So we gave an award to the new graduates, for example, who didn't really have an opportunity to go through commencement and all the brouhaha of getting their license. We gave an award to all of the providers because we're all in this together. Everybody's suffered financial losses. Everybody's struggling. So we just kind of gave each other a pat on the back. So we didn't have individual people come up and give their acceptance speech is the point of that. The gala, we had a volunteer who's a doctor, but she's She doubles as an improv comedian.
Mhm.
So our fundraiser was actually on diversity and inclusion because this was after the George Floyd protests. So we had a couple board members lay the groundwork. They spoke for about 3 to 4 minutes each, introduced the problem, and then we lightened up the mood with this improv person who then did the fundraising pitch. She did a fabulous job, and she really ran it like you would run it at the live event, where she was promoting competition. She was saying, like, hey, Sam, I see you up there in the corner. You need to donate today. She was calling out people. She was calling out the presidents of the universities and saying, we need a donation from you. Let's get 100% participation. So she really kept this going for 5 to 7 minutes. And she asked people, text me if you're pledging. So then she would announce people's pledges, and it just created the same vibe you would have. It was really spectacular. We had 73% participation. 73% of people who attended the gala donated. And then we had to DJ. So the DJ was in a studio. It was totally professional. We hired her for half an hour. So it was minimal cost. She started us out with some jazz music as everybody was gathering. And then we had 2 breaks. So we had a music interlude for 2 breaks, and she played really upbeat live dance music. And then we had 15 minutes at the end where people could just dance. It was awesome. People were grabbing their kids in their living rooms. They were dancing with their dogs. They were boogieing in their chair. You could see all this chair dancing happening. And some people were just full on salsa dancing in their living room. My people love to dance, but we really tried to create that environment of upbeat dance type music and encouraged people to do it. And they did. It was super fun.
Yeah. So, let me ask you this. I mean, we're in the middle of a situation where none of us have any clue when we're going to come out of this pandemic. And, just a couple of days ago, CES, Consumer Electronics Show, announced in January in Las Vegas, that show ain't happening. It's like, oh my God, it's 100,000 people. And so if you, and there's maybe, I hate to say it and be a doubting Thomas, but if you find the need next year to be virtual, what are the things that you might add, after kind of looking, okay, we saw that we did this. We saw that here were a few of the little challenges, okay, we know how we're going to overcome those, and we're going to, and do a little bit extra training. But is there anything else that you might add? Is there any holes that you saw afterwards that you might say, maybe we should consider adding this? And also telling, the other executive directors out there watching this, hey, don't forget, look at this, look at this, look at that. Don't, so any other things that you might add?
Yeah, for participants, I'm not actually sure that we would add too much more. In fact, we might scale back a little bit. So we might not pack quite as many of those kinds of interludes. We had some roundtable breakouts also in between concurrent sessions. I think that if anything, we would scale back, but we threw everything at it. So we kind of went way overboard. We would add a lot more for the exhibitors. So that is something that needs a lot of attention, is how to really get the exhibitors able to engage. And I think that's probably the main thing that we would change. We're really hoping we won't have to be 100% virtual. What we're forecasting now is a hybrid, that we would do some sort of an in-person event we feel like we can never go back to just the full on 100% in person that we had before. In many ways, because we captured a huge part of the market, as you saw from our increased registration numbers, of people who never travel to the convention because of a number of reasons. So how to do that hybrid is what we're going to be grappling with, I think, the most. We know now that we can do the virtual successfully. What's a big unknown is, how do you still balance, if people have an online option, will they come? Will you have fewer numbers? What does that do to the exhibit hall? And are the exhibitors going to be pissed off that there aren't as many in-person attendees? So will our revenue from the exhibit hall decrease because exhibitors won't show up? That's a whole new conference to plan.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Is there a way to blend the exhibitor's experience both with the live attendees and the virtual attendees?
I think so, but we're really going to take a hard look at our content.
Mhm.
What we're thinking right now, and this could evolve, but what we're thinking is that for the in-person event, we would provide content that you can really only do in person.
Okay.
So hands-on trainings, of course, we're doctors, so we can do that. This may not apply to every industry, but really focusing it on hands-on workshops, small person workshops that you can only do live.
Okay.
And then have some component that is lectures that are offered virtually. I'm anticipating that we'll have to have a smaller exhibit hall, but those exhibitors may have more personal interactions, more meaningful interactions than they would with our usual huge exhibit hall.
I see.
And there'll be some sort of a virtual exhibitor component too, but that's all to be figured out.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. Yeah, there's no question that the whole exhibitor thing is a huge issue to how to keep them involved.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts or comments you'd like to share about this conversion from live to virtual and your potential conversion from virtual to hybrid?
Keep the conversations happening. I mean, your CSE sessions, ASAEs, Collaborate, Function, they have been so helpful. Our association community has really come together to help each other with these kinds of sharing of ideas and brainstorming, and that's been invaluable. I have one other thought about the exhibitors that we only just began to do in our conference, but I think should be enhanced, is to really invite your exhibitors to participate in all of the different sessions of the conference. They are part of our community, and they would be interacting in the side parties and the hallway conversations. And some of them, as I said, are providers, and they'd be interacting in the lectures also. We didn't do a very good job of that, and I think it could be enhanced to just make sure exhibitors know, join the happy hour, join the breakout sessions, participate in the chat feature in the lectures, because people identify them as exhibitors. They know who our exhibitors are, but it is a really meaningful way that our exhibitors can participate in these sessions as people who are part of our community. It's not just about the booth.
Yeah, no, I get that. Rather than being so focused on standing in the booth handing out tchotchkes,
right,
to be part of the meeting.
Right.
That makes all the sense in the world. I get around to a lot of, or have over my 30-year career, as a speaker, get around to a lot of different conferences, and it's interesting. Some the sponsors, the exhibitors, the vendors, the allied, whatever we call them, are very engaged, and some they just do not leave the exhibit hall.
They do. And some are behind their booths reading a book, and then they complain that they didn't get any traffic. It's totally true.
Yeah, well, I was just getting ready to say you can't fix stupid, but that would be really rude of me to say that. But yeah, not everybody understands the concept of outreach in selling.
Right.
Yeah, I sometimes I wonder if exhibitors need courses in how to network and sell. Maybe that should be the new thing for exhibitors. Before your meeting, they have to go through the network and sales class before you allow them in your meetings.
I just thought of one other thing that we did, and this is a counterpoint. I listened to one of the other speakers that you had on your show, Ed, and she had mentioned that they sent goodie bags to their participants. Dawn, yeah. And that they were really well received. And we had a similar idea, and we got all of our corporate partners, we invited them to share something to put into a goodie bag. And we got one sponsor who paid for the shipping of the goodie bags. As a counterpoint to Dawn,
sure.
I would say, I don't know that I would do that again.
Why?
So think about it really carefully before you embark on something like that. And I think possibly Dawn had much more interesting goodies in her goodie bag than we did.
Yeah, she was talking about they have her organization was supply chain international, and it was
Yeah.
all executive level people. And she said like one of the things that they did was at the conference they have, I guess, at their booth or at the association, pashminas, so people can wrap themselves because the conferences are always freezing.
They're cold.
I don't know why the conferences have to be freezing, but anyway, but she said they actually shipped pashminas to everybody. I can't remember if she said they had the organization's name on it or not.
Mm-hmm.
But and then she was talking about that she sent a drink mix. So when everybody, did the toast or the happy hour at the end or whatever the heck it was, that all they had to do was mix alcohol. So yeah, I guess it's interesting, thinking about that the quality of your goodie bag, if it's all just, when so many of the conferences I go to, I get my bag, we'll just call it my bag when I register, and there's just a bunch of one-page flyers, advertisements. And there might be something interesting, but I'm a little bit lazy, and I tend to not go through it well enough. I take a quick glance and then maybe something important I missed. I don't know, maybe I'm not too different from many people. But it really seems to me that if you're going to send something out, there's got to be a lot of really, really neat tchotchkes, like, one tchotchke that I love. I'm leaving my screen here, but these telephone holders. I don't know if you've seen these or not, but I've been to a lot of conferences, and so it sits at your desk. Whoops. And my smartphone sits on it, and well, this is dusty, so it's not going to stay. But I've recommended to a lot of organizations use, and they're $1.
Yeah.
And you can put your name on it there and all that. I think that the specialty advertising industry, I mean, they've got a lot of really, really neat stuff, but I know that a lot of people don't put a lot of thought into how effective is especially advertising. Like one of the things when I used to do programs on employee recognition, I'd always make a statement that a company logoed denim shirt has legs. Your employees will keep it for a minimum of 10 years versus a white t-shirt that'll get stained after a few wears, and it's going to be used to wash their car in a few months.
Right.
So, and not to push the denim shirt industry or anything like that. I mean, for my charity, the Scarpeg, I mean, almost all the shirts are dark colored just because I want them to last a long time, but I think that that's a very interesting conversation to have with whoever supplies your, they don't want to be called promotional products anymore. They want to be called specialty advertising, but whichever it is.
And what you ask for, if you decide to do a goodie bag, the quality of the goodie bag, I think, is really important. If you're going to go through the time and effort to do it, it really needs to be high value. People loved getting them. I mean, don't get me wrong on that front. When we sent them out through stamps.com, and so Stamps sends out an email to people saying, hey, this package is being shipped to you. And I had people saying like, oh my gosh, like, what are you sending me? There was some excitement about it, but we're a small association. I have a very small staff and a super small budget. So literally everything got shipped to me in my garage, and it was my family that was sitting there doing an assembly line of stuffing all of these packages and putting the stamps on them and printing it. And it was, for the time that we had to take to do it, it was definitely not worth it. And you really need to evaluate. And then we got a whole bunch that were returned to us. The addresses were wrong. People don't complete the right address. They don't put in their suite number in their registration form. So there's a lot of
well, yeah, and also I think you got to look at weight. Like as an example, a couple years ago for my charity event, when we had our 20th anniversary, we were giving away, these are beer mugs with our charity's logo on it. But we delivered them there and handed them out, so everybody took one home in their suitcase. But these are heavy to ship.
Yeah.
And while they're cool, it's like, yeah, not only can they break, but they're hard to ship. So yeah, that is an interesting point.
Yeah. Just wanted to offer that counterpoint.
Yeah, no, I think that I love it when people say, hey, I disagree with so-and-so, and here's why. Because not to be mean or anything, but it's just to get a different perspective.
Learned from each other, right?
Yeah.
So she had this idea, we ran with it, and we learned something.
Did you
an extra piece of information to share.
Did you do your mailing because of watching Don's video?
We had already been considering it.
Okay.
So it was on the table, and then she was so enthusiastic about it that I was like, okay, we're on the right path.
Yeah. So perhaps it wasn't that the idea was wrong. Perhaps it was the implementation.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, because frequently, we look at, well, that was a bad idea. Well, no, it was a great idea. It just didn't get implemented properly. So it appeared to be a bad idea.
Right. And that's why I wanted to share, here's an extra piece of information for people to consider if you're considering doing a goodie bag thing. There are some cons to it, and you have to think about how to do it right.
You got to put some really awesome tchotchkes in there.
Awesome.
Well, hey, Laura, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and share. When you laid out a really, really nice list of notes for me about your event, and with your permission, I'm going to drop this list of notes in the in the description of the video.
Sure. Absolutely.
So you can access them. But it's so many of us are trying to figure out. I'm going to be I just yesterday did a closing general session for a virtual conference, and tomorrow I'll be attending as an attendee a virtual conference that's starting 3 days. And we're all kind of looking at this, and we're all figuring it out together. And it sounds like, though, I got to say, with all the challenges and the little hiccups, I mean, if you only had 20 people with a freak out not being able to check in, and if you only had a few speakers that went over, and if it sounds to me like your hiccups were very, very minor.
Yeah.
And it sounds to me like you guys pulled off a very awesome and successful event for your members that, I would guess that they're going to really appreciate that you and your staff were able to make the shift so quick and still deliver to them a meaningful event that they wouldn't have been able to have otherwise.
Yeah, we feel really positively about the conference after the fact. We were shocked that it went so smoothly, pleasantly shocked. And we've been getting great feedback. We've had about 80% of the people who have responded to our evaluations say that we went above the expectations of what they thought could be delivered in a virtual conference. So there is a lot of opportunity here. There's a lot of optimism of what we can do with this new technology. But we are definitely all bumbling our way through it together. So
yeah, and too bad that nobody can travel. Otherwise, you could send your staff down to Bermuda for a vacation for a couple.
We need a retreat.
Recover.
There is a lot of. I'll just close on this. There is a lot more front end work that has to be done in this kind of environment, and I think people should plan for that as much as you can. Conferences are always super hectic right before you go into them, but it's even, I think, more so before going into a virtual conference, because you have to do so much more training of your participants, of how to make sure that they know how to log into the platform, your speakers so that they know how to use the platform, your exhibitors. That is all happening before the conference. Once you get into the conference virtually, it ran pretty seamlessly, and it was pretty easy once we got through those, I'd say, 7 days before the conference were crazy.
That begs an interesting question. And here's the question. I've observed some organizations that it appears to me that they put so much energy into marketing their virtual conference and put very little energy into organizing their virtual conference. And now you're throwing out that that maybe the organizing, what the real problem was, the lack of this front end preparation to make sure everything was going to work, to make sure everybody was trained, so forth and so on.
Yeah. That front end preparation is super, super important. I mean, we're all used to at the in-person event, we have the whole registration table set up. You're used to that crush of 100, 200, 1,000 people coming, 5 minutes before presentations start.
Sure.
You can't have that in a virtual event. It is absolutely impossible. Your people have to know how to log into the platform and get to where they're going days before you actually launch. And that's all front end work that has to be done.
And there was no problem with Pathable with using that to be able to let the people do a dry run through beforehand?
No, that's a good question. We actually launched our site, the whole event site. We launched it weeks before the actual conference started, with the intentional purpose to invite people to come tour the platform, to log in, claim your profile, get familiar with the platform, explore the exhibit hall. So technically, our event was live for weeks before the actual conference. And we were sending out messages to registrants every single day, sometimes twice a day right before, saying, you haven't claimed your profile yet. You need to make sure that you log in, explore it. You can filter out who has already claimed their profile, so you're not sending the same repeat message to people.
How much more did that cost to have it going beforehand?
It was all included in the
it didn't matter?
price. It didn't matter.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as far as people claiming their profile, I mean, was a challenge to get people to fill it out and put their picture in or put their avatar or whatever?
Not really.
No. Okay.
People who, of course, younger generation, they inherently do it. We had to do some hand holding for some folks. Some people didn't put their avatar in, but most people did not have a problem with it.
Okay.
And those who really had a problem with it, we were able to send them that magic link.
Got it.
Get them in.
So the baby boomers like me kind of had some challenges, huh?
Yeah, a little bit more. Need a little bit more hand holding.
Oh gosh. Oh, what can I say? Yeah. We're all of us baby boomers. We're so stuck in our ways.
This is a hard reality. I mean, this is a monumental shift,
Yeah, I know. That's pretty funny. Well, hey, Laura, thanks so much. This was awesome. This was just really, really helpful. I not only learned a lot myself today, and I hope that everybody that views this can really take away some takeaways that will help them to be able to put on a better virtual meeting. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Happy to do it. Happy to answer questions. If anybody has questions, I'm at executive@naturopathic.org. If anybody wants to shoot me an email, but I'm definitely happy to share. I've learned from the community as well, and we all just are in this together.